All right, so I am here with the CEO of AT Socio-Judicial Consulting LLC. She is also a retired judge from Nigeria originally and the first brown woman to get a PhD in Judicial Studies. We here have Dr. Tobi-Aiyemo, who currently resides in New York City. Welcome so much to, thank you for coming to Backpacking America. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said I'm glad to be here.
Oh, awesome. So, let's just get like right into it. We did discuss a lot about how our societies have different viewpoints on the police and the judge before we started this. So I wanted to really kick off the discussion with that. Like, when you came to America, what was something you noticed radically different about our people's approach and look at law enforcement and judges as opposed to Nigeria?
Thank you for that question. The first cultural shock for me was the fact that they elected judges here, as opposed to Nigeria, where it's strictly on um, appointments based on when you were appointed or sworn in as a judge. It's based on seniority on an hierarchy level, where the first person who was appointed as a judge gets to the position where he is taken to a more senior position, and then it grows. You grow from there. Here, you are elected. You stand for elections and all of that. And I said to myself, "Wow, this is a democratic society. This is like maybe." And I don't believe it's an ideal democracy anyway, but I think before the Trump era, we had America standing as a unique democracy, right? That the rest of us developing democracies would expect to want to be like. And I found that I said, well, is this really democratic for a judiciary to be elected? Because when you are elected and it's partisan, then you already are saying judges are taking sides, Democratic judges versus Republican judges. So that was one area that really stood out and was a shock for me. And as much as I kept asking myself, still do, how do the judges, some of the judges, get to take decisions when it affects Democrats as opposed to Republicans and stuff like that, especially the Supreme Court judges. So that was one area. Another area would definitely be the ethical issue. Nigerian judges and I think Africa, we are very strict on ethics, on the issues of relationship with community and society. We're a bit high-handed. Because we're British colonized, we have this, I don't know if, I'm not saying this is in the books, but we have this kind of Buckingham Palace kind of attitude of we and the rest of them, we are different. We are not to relate with society in such a way that we give ourselves give society a wrong impression about the judiciary, about the judge. The judge is supposed to be high up there, where society should look at us as different and very courteous and all that. So the American judge, I noticed, is very, very American. American is a land of liberty. It's just freedom, and they're free. They're free to talk to people and relate with people, and you're very free and simple. And I loved that. Back home, judges, it's difficult to see a judge back home, but here you can get an appointment and see a judge, and it's easy. They're accessible, more accessible than judges back home, and they relate more with social media. They're out there, and Nigerian judges, though they're coming up, but a lot of Nigerian judges believe that social media is not for the judge. So these are two areas that, off the top of my head, that I can think of right now, that was a cultural difference for me, and still doing a bit of research about that.
Yeah, no, I could see how that would be a major shock. That's one thing that I do like a lot about living here is that you can interact with your elected officials. I remember When I was at work, when I worked in promotions, on the promotion side of radio, I'd be in the street a lot, and I would see these people that were like senators or whatever, or representatives, and they would be walking down the street at a street festival or a fair, and sometimes you'd heckle them, sometimes you'd shake their hand, and they wouldn't care because they were just like, ah, all right, whatever.
Exactly. That's liberty, right? That's what I talk about, that liberty, and it was a good thing that you can see judges and relate with them, you know. So I liked that aspect on the one hand, but then on the other hand, as judges, you also want to be careful because of the security issues. So somehow I would say for security, I believe the Nigerian high-handedness and distance between the judges and community in that respect would be for security, right?
Mm.
But then in terms of what I am, my company and my personal belief is that society should be connected to the judiciary. There should be a closeness more. So I'm kind of trying to merge the American system, judicial system of liberty, with the society, with the Nigerian, which is high-handed, and somehow come to a compromise, a center, an equilibrium, if you would, where judges are not too high-handed and judges are not too out there for society, because then when you offend someone, they can shoot you, they can arrest, they can kidnap your family members, they can just, do anything. So,
But yeah, no, that's a good point. I feel like there's a lot that could be said about that, where trying to bridge that gap, right? Make it a serious position, but not alienate. I think it might determine more based on like the different regions in the country. I feel like if you're in the more metropolitan northeastern area of the country, people look at judges differently than if you were in the rural South. Especially if you're in a larger or smaller community, these things differ, because if you're in a small rural area, everyone knows each other. And you also bring up a good point with partisan views, where the partisanship of the judge comes into play amid all this other stuff, where it's great you can elect a judge, but they're part of a political party and a political agenda at that point. And maybe one thing that might be suggested is to make them non-party, so that way, and maybe have term limits, so that way they're not consistently power hungry and they're just there to exercise the law, but instead of making a career out of it.
Yeah, that would be a very good idea. But first of all, the question would be, how many judges out there really are partisan in their decisions? So if we take a statistics, because we don't have any, I don't have any for now. I'm sure maybe there would have been a book or two written about it or some research out there. But how many judges really have taken decisions based on the fact that they are partisan or taking partisan decisions? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, are you there? Hello? Oh no, did we lose her? Hello? Oh, goodness. All right, hold on. Let me call her back. Let me call her back. But she brings up a good point where how do we judge if someone is partisan or not? Like how do we really study that? And that's a very difficult thing to figure out. But hello?
Hello?
Oh, wrong person. That was funny. I don't even know who the hell that was. Oh, that was Jonah. Oh, that was Jonah. Okay, wait. How do I... Who was that? Come on. Is it 518? Oh, here it is. Let's see if we can pick it up
hello?
again. Hey, there you are. So we lost you.
I was just trying to call you back.
I saw that. I couldn't figure it out on it wasn't coming up on my computer, so I just had to call you from here. I'm sorry about that. You okay? Aliens get you?
Yeah. Yeah, what did we
Oh, we were talking about the partisanship of judges,
Okay,
like how
yeah.
would you determine?
Yeah. So it all depends on how many American judges have we on record, or has there been reports or concerns that their decisions are based on partisan views, right? Because as far as I know, the late Scalia, wonderful jurist, there were times that Scalia originally is a conformist, a constructionist, a man of formal uh, school of interpretation, that you would interpret the Constitution based on the rules, based on the words that the drafters used. So but there are times that Scalia shifted a bit to pragmatism. His views were not necessarily what you would consider a quote and unquote Republican view. Yes, even if you would say that, oh, maybe he, had more of that inclination. And there were times that the Judge Sotomayor would give decisions based. She's a realist. I mean, you could tell, she's from the realist school of jurisprudence, school of thought, of interpretation. She believes that the law should be interpreted in a way that would be best in the interest of society, that would relate to relevant situations and changes in society, and in terms of impact and social change. But there are times that her decision would also be come across as a bit, Republican in nature, if I could use that for lack of a better word. So there are times that some judges would decide, and you would think, oh, this is a Republican judge. You would definitely give a decision that would be very Republican in nature, and the judge may give a decision that is not. So basically, my point is, yes, we would agree and say, if we had a way, if the judiciary would decide, let's start appointing judges as opposed to electing judges, that would be a good thing. The only reason why, not the only reason, one of the reasons why it would be a good thing is because there is a saying, a typical judicial aphorism that says, justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. So if you, Anthony, and the rest of society believes that the judge is giving a decision based on the fact that he or she is a Republican or a Democrat, and you don't think that that is justice, then justice is not seen to be done, right? The judge may give a decision that society may think is partial because he or she is a Republican or Democratic appointed judge. So in that situation, justice is not as perceived to be done to the society, and which is part of what I am trying to do in my organization, to say justice should be more relevant to society than it is to the judge. The judge should be able to interpret justice to society the way society understands justice, and not the way the law says justice should be. Because if we interpret justice the way the courts understand it and the way the law says, and society doesn't understand that justice, then who are we serving? Because we're public servants. Judges are public servants. Who are they serving? Are they serving the law? Is the law made for man, or man for the law?
Right. I mean, I don't. You see, it's a tricky thing, because if we do court-appointed judges, though, if that is the solution, if the higher up government structure, the people that do appoint these judges, is corrupted, much like in our Supreme Court system, where the Senate, the House, and the President all play a role in appointing Supreme Court justices, we'd see that corruption seep down into our circuit courts and our local courts. So while it is true that, if you get a Republican judge that rules more along the political line instead of what the law says, or a Democrat that does the same, at least you have the chance to get that judge out. You have a chance to go to the ballot box and remove them instead of overturning an entire government. And that's my major concern if we move towards that. That I have no better word for it other than authoritarian, because I feel that it would almost impede the democratic society that we at least strive for in this country. It's not perfect, but
Yeah.
to make the court-appointed judge a thing would be kind of scary in many ways, because it could lead to careerism too, unless the court-appointed judge was recycled like every year. But
Yes.
there's no that's my fear, is careerism and corruption, because we see a lot of that already.
So you're saying that if you appoint judges, there'll be more corruption than them?
I don't want to say that it prevents corruption, because there's still corruption even in our democratic system. District attorneys are corrupted. Sheriff's offices are corrupted, and even the Supreme Court is corrupted. The whole process around it, even expanding how many justices are on the court for political goals, that's corruption. But the way we look at, the law in any society, the legal system, of course, has levels of corruption to it, but at least we're able to elect judges and maybe push them out. That's the whole hope with at least democratically electing a judge. And
so which is a good point, to electing judges as opposed to appointing.
Yes.
I guess to a certain respect, I would agree with you, because in comparison now to Nigeria, when you have elections, sometimes, I beg your pardon, when you have appointments, you see that sometimes the appointments are based on who knows who, as opposed to merit. So you could say that's a level of corruption right there, because if the society is electing, right, society would elect a judge that they believe would stand for what the principles and the values that they hold, right?
Right.
Even though, like I said, I'm not into the election aspect, because I don't believe judges should be elected. But the point is, appointment, like you said, can also foster some corruption, because there are some appointments that would be based on, oh, I know this person. This person is related to a colleague. It's a colleague's family, the daughter or child of a colleague, so I should put him as a judge, even when he or she doesn't know the law or doesn't have the merits for it. Yeah. So I guess
there's, and that's a good point, and there is that type of nepotism in our current system. I mean, we even see it in police, where family of police can have an easier time getting into the department and getting higher positions when they do get in. We see that in even schools and other institutions that are supposed to be democratic, or at least, preserving our democracy, are often not in practice. And specifically, I want to talk to you about the police too. So when you look at the attitude regarding the police in Nigeria as opposed to how Americans regard them when you came here, what was your deductions there?
I was privileged to be part of the Oswego County Police Reform Task Force. And I also presently on the board of the Oriental Police Review Board. And so I've been doing a lot of the work with the police lately, the past 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. And I got to understand the police system more from my program. And I find out that it's about the same thing, Culture is a very interesting concept. You think because you're a different race that it's different with you, but sometimes it's not. Culture just has a way. The culture of the criminal justice system in the United States and the criminal justice system in Nigeria is the same thing. I remember that in my presentation to the Oswego County Task Force on the review of the committee's report, that I said something about, at that time, incidentally, the end SARS. There was a situation with Nigerian police and the SARS situation, and that was when the George Floyd issue came up. So we had one side fighting about killing and shooting people, and there's this NSAS riot going on, and then we have the other one saying there was racism and knee choke and stuff like that. And one thing that is common about both systems is the lack of understanding of community. The Nigerian police does not understand and does not relate with the community as should they. And they can actually start shooting people and killing innocent children in the course of trying to keep the community safe. How would you talk about safety when you are the one that is the danger? You are killing and shooting at innocent protesters who are exercising their constitutional rights, and you are supposed to be upholding a mandate to secure people's lives. How does that happen? And then you come to the American society, the American police doing a wonderful job, just like the Nigerian police, taking care of the community and putting safety in place, but doing it the wrong way. You do not understand how community plays a major role in your mandate as a police officer. When you don't understand that, there's a problem. So we have courses about community policing. There's one I'm proposing presently to the county. And community policing is not just about saying hi to people and knowing your neighbors who are different. It's more than that. It's trying to understand certain races and how they relate and react to fear or to harassment or to arrest. If you want to, for instance, arrest an African-American man, for instance, and this is not generalizing, okay? I'm in no position to do that, but a limited, a few of them that I've come across, there is a typical thing of defensiveness. Africanism has a bit to do with being defensive. Now, if you want to arrest an African American man and you feel that he has committed an offense, your approach will determine how he or she reacts to you. And when he starts to raise his voice, or the African American woman starts to raise her voice in the sense of, what did I do? Why are you arresting me? Why are you telling me? It is not a time for the police officer to start yelling back. It is a time to use an alternative way to de-escalate. Relating with community is key to what the Nigerian police and American police has not gotten yet.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there is definitely a lack of accountability in understanding the attitude of the people they police. And there's even been reports of countless cadets in cadet school sharing the awful ways that police are trained in certain communities to view citizens. A lot of times it's almost enemy non-combatants is the way that they're viewed. And when you try to call this out, you are basically in jeopardy of losing your life as an officer trying to call out dirty cops. And it's such a system. It's such a brutal system that even if you want to be one of the police officers that enacts the changes you say, like such as de-escalation and even going far enough to report, malpractice, because like you said, exercising unsafe activities against the mandate of a police officer. And if you're trying to correct that and come true to your mandate, you're going to be put in jeopardy by those large groups of police officers on your force that will try to uphold the thin blue line. So how do we approach this problem, like internally? Like, how do we make it so that it's the flip side, where there's cops that overwhelmingly want to do good and uphold their duty, and the ones that don't want to do that are in the minority, and those that try to do the right thing and report malpractice don't have to worry about their lives being at risk?
I think that's a very good question. I think anonymous report units.
Explain. What do you mean?
I'm thinking about it. It's just something in the course of my research. Like I said, 3 years working on this. I'm suggesting anonymous report units, ARUs, right? Where they will not be part of the police. They'll just be independent volunteers, just like you get jury, the jury system.
Okay.
Like we both jury system, right? We ask just the way you get jurors to participate in court. So you get them through that process and get members of the society from different aspects. Okay, it may not be within the county, maybe outside the county, maybe just anywhere within the region that understands the system within the region, right? Or within the state, or within that region, basically, the coast, East Coast, just around, it could be Pennsylvania, it could be, Boston, anywhere around New York, right? And get a committee that we would call ARUs, Anonymous Report Units, for good cops. So if we have a cop who is so sick and tired of his chief not doing the right thing and looking over someone who uses the N-word and means it when he does it with such hate and someone who probably is very nasty to any other race other than the Caucasian race because he has this superiority attitude, and the cop really is suspecting that this person needs to be checked out because the chief is being biased, not calling this guy to order, and this guy shouldn't even be sent out to go do arrest or anything because he's the kind of person that could be George Floyd, repeat what happened in George Floyd or something like that. So where you have such people, they could go to these anonymous report units and make their complaints, and they're totally anonymous.
Okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea because a lot of the reforms that have been discussed never really include that. A lot of I commend you for at least trying to come up with a way to put structure into the defund and reform movement, because a lot of it is vague calls for justice that don't really make sense unless you have an actual plan. I did want to mention something else, though. We do focus on race a lot on the issue, but what about the class dynamic? Do you see that it's in America and in Nigeria, have you seen that the police exercise more hostility towards the multiracial working class as opposed to the wealthy class when they enforce the law?
Oh, definitely everywhere. It's and I would use this as an example, totally unrelated, but it is a fact of life. And the reason I'm going to use it as an example is because it is, you see this, whatever it is called, inequality, discrimination, racism, nepotism, stereotyping, is not going anywhere. And it's like a wild goose chase. It's like a mirage. You're getting there and you think you're solving it. You're not getting anything. Because human beings are typically wired, and I don't know who wired us this way, so don't ask me, but human beings are typically wired to have that attitude, that air of competition, and I am, so there's this thing about, it just comes, it's not something you prepare for, but it just comes upon this who feels, oh, this person has a certain class, so I would tone down in my relationship, in my communications with this individual, right? And this is the example I'm going to bring out to you. So I traveled to Nigeria to organize a symposium on courts and the law and society, I beg your pardon. And I went with Turkish Airlines, right? So we left from JFK, and it was a lovely flight. It was, wonderful food and everything. And they gave us this, the pouches they usually give in the flights, the purse for your refreshments and stuff like that to freshen up yourself. And it was so beautiful. And then we got to Istanbul and waited up for the connecting flight to Nigeria. From the plane, from when I got into the plane, Anthony, I saw a class change.
Really? How so?
I noticed that the reception that was given from JFK to Istanbul with the package, with the service, we had a lower standard from Istanbul to Nigeria. Why so?
Was it the class of ticket that you purchased, or was it the
It was
plane?
the same. It was the same class. It was the same class ticket. It was the same economy class ticket, right?
Right.
And the same plane, but there was a different pouch, which was very inferior, and very ugly. It wasn't the same that I got when I was coming from the United States to Istanbul. In other words, yes.
I thought
In
the
other
plane was
words,
divided by like first class and then
no.
economy. Okay.
It's all about the fact that whatever this airline is thinking is there's a superior reception to the American flight from JFK, or there's a standard that the Americans are expected of, or that I beg your pardon, that the flights are given to this American, takeoff point, and then there's a lower standard for Nigeria.
I see
Now,
what you're saying.
I use this example to say to you that automatically, people just have a way of thinking less, about someone based on the persona or based on your dressing or your attitude. Which is why I said I like the fact that judges here in America are very free, and they don't have this air where you could see a judge who just dresses very simple, wears shorts and flip flops and is walking on the street, and you're like, hey judge,
Mm-hmm.
it's wonderful because it's like there's a bit of I'm also in part of this society, right? But when the police, now going back to your question, when the police or the law enforcement sees an individual and they're supposed to make an arrest, the first thing they're thinking about is this person likely to commit the offense? So there's this class thing about arresting somebody who you think is more likely to commit an offense, even when the person doesn't look like he or she has committed the offense, as opposed to the person who looks obviously like, okay, there's a criminal or something, there's a report that someone snatched someone's purse. I mean, the first thing you're thinking about when you're going around the park and looking for whoever is a suspect is a raggedy-looking man, as opposed to a well-dressed female who could possibly have stolen the outfit she wore and snatched and took the purse and decided, the police officer is coming, I may just walk and act like I'm okay. So they wouldn't know I was the one that stole because I'm well-dressed. And that is one of the failures of our criminal justice system, that our police officers or law enforcement agents actually make arrests of suspects or treat suspects differently. Now, one of the things about the criminal justice system that Nigeria took from the United States that I totally disagree with and I don't like is the plea bargaining system.
Oh, okay.
Now,
What specifically do you not like about the plea bargain? Oh, the plea bargain system. Yeah, actually, no. I hate the plea bargain system because they bully you. They bully
It
you
is.
into
It
being
is. It
guilty.
is a class. Yes, it is a class, and I don't know who brought about the paper gaming, but something just takes me all the way down to Sicily. Yeah, it takes
Sicily?
me all the way down to Sicily. It's Italy. The
No,
mafiaism.
I'm
Okay,
Sicilian. That's why I was just like,
mafia.
wait a minute.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Yeah. So the mafia, there is always a plea bargaining with mafias and courts.
right.
The Capone,
Casa
okay,
Nostra.
we just get this man to just, you could serve a few couple of terms, and then the people will get you, that we'll take care of you, we'll take care of you. You'll be out in no time, and what they do is, okay, so this Capone goes to the other Capone and say, let's do this, and we'll just get the police off our backs, because this is, if we have to do this, and they get this main person, all of our deals and our cocaine deals are off. So you just put yourself in as a scapegoat, and let's do this, and say we're giving you out, right? And then you stay there. We'll take care of you in prison. Don't worry, and stuff like that. And so gaming, I believe, is actually for the rich people, so that they don't spend too much time in jail.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing with bail. I mean, bail, like, if people set, that's why I think, reforming the bail system, where we're making it a very, very affordable amount for, working people to be able to bail themselves out is important, because before bail reform in New York, they could set bail at like $20,000, $30,000. Who's got that much money laying around? The wealthy. So the wealthy were able to just bail, their people out of jail and get them adequate defense. And the working class, if I went to jail and they said, yeah, $30,000, $50,000 bail, forget it. Now it's like $1,000. That's a little more realistic. But, making it this high bail level, it makes it almost inaccessible to, because then you have to wait in prison until your court date, which is what happens with a lot of people, even still with the bail reform. A lot of people have to wait in prison for upwards of 6 to 12 months just to get a court date.
The police can grant bail in Nigeria.
What?
The police can grant bail in Nigeria. That's a bit of a difference between thank you for reminding me of that. The bail system is a bit different as well. The police can grant bail, but then unfortunately a lot of times the police bail has to do with you have to drop something to get bail. So a lot of times people would prefer the court bail, because then you're not bribing the judge. You're just, where a certain amount of money is stated. Although, yes, you could say that it's almost the same in terms of, why would you ask for such an amount of money? Now, bail, let's define bail. Bail is not necessarily that you must exchange money for your freedom. Now, a lot of court staff do that to take money as a bribe from families of the suspect, or the arrested person, so that they could get the person, bail. And they say, the magistrate asked for this amount of money. Some of them, it's not true. So bail is supposed to be like, okay, what is the amount that you can forfeit to the state if this person does not appear in court?
I see.
So if I look at you and I say, Anthony has been arrested for, God forbid, for fraud, and I'm supposed to grant bail. Now, what is the condition that the magistrate or the judge should grant bail? It's discretionary, right? The bail should be based on, this person is a dual citizen and is likely to jump bail or to travel out of the country, or he or she has access to travel out. So if I give bail on such a easy term, this person could go, right? And then say, maybe get somebody who has a landed property in a certain place. So making bail difficult for the person to make bail. The magistrate or the judge grants the bail that is so easy, then it would be easy for the person to jump bail. So sometimes some judges think about it in that aspect, and that if we get this person out there, it's possible that this person may be a threat to society or may be a threat to a certain, and this is not always the case, a certain political ambition, right? Especially when this thing has to do with vendetta or partisan relations, right? So when you grant bail, you're saying, if you don't produce this person in the court by the next time, you will forfeit that amount of money. So anybody who is standing as a surety for Anthony must be able to produce Anthony in court the next time. Otherwise, you will forfeit that amount of money to the state. How? How would you forfeit that amount of money? You could pay it, you could sell your house, you could give your shares, you could do anything. So that is how bail operates in Nigeria.
I see. That's very different. I did not. I guess that was very Amerocentric of me to think it worked the same way, or to not think about it at all.
No,
But
it's not the same way. It's not the same way. It's you don't pass with physical money, except the person doesn't come to court, and then the bail the court would now order and say the bail bond was charged for this amount of naira, and since this person Anthony did not come to court, you would either forfeit that bail bond, pay it to the treasury of the state, and immediately it is paid, the surety is vindicated from all responsibility and all, and the surety is now let loose. However, if the surety does not produce that money, he or she is arrested and now becomes the defendant, where the surety now goes to prison and gets another surety to surety him and to grant bail. Do you understand? In other words, if I stand surety for you and you jump bail, then the court arrests me, or I forfeit that amount of money. So a lot of times when the judge gives a bail amount that is so high, it's because if the surety is not able to pay it, then the surety will be held responsible. And in such a situation, the surety would have to produce the defendant who has jumped bail.
Okay. So when you see this in America, do you see, like, when you look at bail in America, do you see the sharp class distinctions in how bail is handed out here?
I think it's I think it's a bit class distinction. It's the same thing. There's this class distinction in bail in Nigeria as well, really, because sometimes some judges would say, "Oh, Anthony has an estate, so I would give Anthony bail based on self-recognizance, as opposed to go get a surety."
I
Do you
see.
understand?
So if you don't have the means to get a surety, so you're basically gonna have to go
Doomed.
through. You're doomed. Yeah.
Doomed. You're going to be in prison, and that's one of the problems, that our prisons are overcrowded in Nigeria.
What blows my mind too is when we do discuss a lot of, as you know, political discussion in our country revolves around race and not so much around class. And it's your country has this exploitative model of capitalism like ours does, and your capitalism was brought by having to interact with colonialism, and ours had to deal.
Yes.
What'd you say?
Colonialism. Yeah, the British. Yes.
Yes.
Colonialism.
So that happened, and then with us, we had to free ourselves from the British, and then we ended up adopting capitalism and refining it, and still having to deal with all the negatives of that. And both are working people. We both suffer to varying degrees based on how developed it is. And the judicial system, I always looked at the judicial system in our country as, it doesn't matter if you're a good person or a bad person. It matters how much money you have. And the primary goal of the police is to protect property, not to protect you. Ideals are one thing. In the first part of this, when we were talking about, the role of the police and the role of the judge, those are the things that they're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, they're there to maintain order set out by the wealthy, the ruling class of our countries. So, it's almost like our duty. You are a former judge, and now you're studying legal system in America. Uh, I have a show, so I'm trying to bring people like you and others on here to talk about what can we do to better this. But really, at the end of the day, what can we do? Like how can we actually take it back, like make the ideals of our system actually work without, and obviously this will, encounter resistance from those that have power, because no one gives up power easily. But, what are, how do we're faced with such an insurmountable task where they have the courts stacked against working people. They have the cops with their guns to working people. It's, some would say it's hopeless. I'm not a hopeless person, but there needs to be an overall strategy and an overall way that, as society, we were able to connect with each other and figure out a way to communicate a plan to install a system where our ideals can be made a reality.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say what you say about the judicial system, about it being about. Sorry. Are you okay?
Oh yeah. Oh, you could hear that? I thought you were able to hear the. I thought I muted my mic. I'm okay.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, the concept of the and I would call it illusion that you forgive me for that word, that judges principally, right? And when I say that there are exceptions to the rule, the exceptions, but that judges are into class, that justice is about class. Justice is not about what is right or wrong, that justice is about class. I think the A aspect of it, where you say justice is not about right or wrong, I would agree to an extent, and that is what I am talking about in my my consulting firm. We're trying to redefine justice. What justice means to society sometimes may not be what justice means to the court. And unfortunately for judges, it's a dilemma because they are there to We're trying to redefine justice. What justice means to society, the law that the legislators means to the court. So when a judge interprets a law, and that law is not understood by an Anthony, for instance, he calls it capitalism, and he says the judge is partial. He says the judge is corrupt. He says the judge is bipartisan, or the judge is talking about class and giving justice to somebody who doesn't understand. And one of the two most misunderstood careers in the world in the democratic era, I would say, is the police and the judge. The police, unfortunately, the law enforcement, have been misunderstood as well because, take for example, and I'll go back to the courts. For example, a phone call comes to a 911 call. Oh, hello, my husband's trying to kill me. My boyfriend's trying to kill me, or whatever, right? And as a police officer who has blood running through your veins, what is the first thing you think the police officer would do?
Get ready to fight.
Thank you. To save a woman in distress. Because his mandate is to make sure that everybody is safe, is to enforce the law. He's a law enforcement. So the first thing he's thinking about is, oh my goodness, there's a woman in danger. If anything happens, she's going to die. Because it's like, worst case scenario with a police officer, that is with the law enforcement. It's like, always think of the worst thing. What is the last command? These people are trained that way. So whenever we judge police officers, and this is not me holding brief for them, and I'm not playing devil's advocate, because now I think America is not being fair to the police and saying, oh, they're all bad and all of that. One Judas cannot make the remaining 11 all bad. Sure, there are mistakes, sure, there are errors, but not all of them, right? So let's try to manage the little ones we have that are right and encourage those ones so we don't get them discouraged. So the first thing he does, he goes to the door, or they go to the door, 911, sirens all over the place, and they're banging. Open up. This is the NYPD. And you know, there's no opening. There's no sound. Oh my goodness. Could she be dead? Is something happening? Open up NYPD. And the next thing they're breaking in and they see a guy with a broken bottle or a knife. With the voice they heard about a woman and all of that. And, and the next thing he's trying to reach out for his jacket or something. What do you, natural instinct of defense, just even forget the fact that he's a police officer, a human being. What's your natural instinct? Self-defense.
Yeah, but the guy's now he's wounded. At that point you give a verbal command to freeze. You don't just start blasting away.
You don't start blasting away, definitely. Yeah, that is where they go too far, right? But my point is, sometimes you see, who dictates the level of danger? At what point? Is it at the point where she says, "Oh, my husband's trying to kill me," and the officer who took that call, or and sends out the team is already, or is that the point where NYPD open up and no one is responding and like, is she dead or is something? How many more people are in the house?
Right.
So that's an area of where the police is misunderstood, because sometimes you first of all ask, what is the mandate of this police officer? At what time did he or she execute or attempt to execute this mandate against the Constitution? Now, if we judge them based on the mandate and their motive, then we could see where their errors are coming from and deal with it from there. Now, moving over to the judge. What is the judge's mandate? To interpret the law. Now, I did a bit of research about the role of judges. And in my research, I said we should redefine or define the role of judges. Because interpreting statutes is not the only thing judges do. In the 21st century, in a democracy, judges do more than interpret the laws. Because the reason why judges are misunderstood, and someone like you or many other people can say, and I don't blame you that say, oh, judges are capitalist, is because they don't understand what judges do, and because the role of judges, society has assumed or redefined the role of judges somewhere in the back of their mind, and judges have no idea of that. So there's a gap between what do you guys really do? We expect you to do this, we expect you to do that, but you're not doing it. So you failed us because you are you're not doing your role or your job like you should do as a judge. So the judge is sitting there and looking and saying, what do they want me to do? And you present it to them, because the judge is not supposed to sit there and know that this is what you want them to do. You have to pray. You have to make an application before the court. You make an application by filing your motions or your oral application, and the judge hears you. Now, the judge has to go back to a mandate. And the mandate is in the law, in the statutes. What does the law say about this? The judge goes through the law and would give out what the law says.
It's not even that, I don't even disagree. The thing is that like the law is created by those in power, though. So even though, like, for obvious reasons, like, the 10 Commandment type of laws, like don't kill people, don't rape people, that obviously that has nothing to do with the capitalists. That's just age old stuff. But I'm talking about, property relations stuff and laws that were created to maintain and execute power, like the Patriot Act and, bills like this that gave, widespread authority to abuse, workers. We have, anti-union laws in certain states. We have certain labor laws. Basically, what I'm saying is that capitalism is beyond the individual and actions and feelings of state actors like the judge and the police officer. There are good cops. There are good judges. And there's good people and bad people in all these roles. But overall, the system necessitates cruelty, and it necessitates, like you said, what's in the statutes, and it necessitates that you enforce it. But in a lot of cases, not in a lot of cases, but a lot of the laws are maintained to hold up the economic and social system in this country, and that is a capitalist
So the
system.
law is the problem, not the police, not the judge. Well, okay, I'll rephrase that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Over
I'm
50%,
saying it's not.
over 50%. The judge is the police or the judge is not the problem. The problem is with going back to the legislators and saying this law has to be changed. By the way, we should thank judges. We have to thank the judiciary, because even though people say judges don't make laws, I beg to disagree. To a certain level, judges impact the making of laws. For instance, the American case, Marbury Madison, about judicial review, that trailblazing case, the American judiciary has, stood out as setting the pace for judicial review, aka judicial lawmaking, right? So at a certain level where you see a judge saying, this law is not relevant to this case, and it doesn't make sense to this case. However, I can review this law based on my judicial discretion, and the fact that the law does not give a good definition to help this case, I can give a judicial review and based on this. And where that happens and the discretion of the judge goes into play and goes into action, then the legislators can say, based on this, I think we can do something to change the status quo. The Miranda Rights. What do you think? What about the Miranda Rights?
They're essential.
Case of Miranda against Arizona.
Yeah.
The law enforcement cannot use testimony given by anyone under interrogation. So that is what about the Miranda Rights, because the court held the decision and said no, you can't do that. So the police now came up with the Miranda Rights. You have the right to remain silent. Whatever you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. You also have the right of attorney. So that is how impactful the judges should be. So instead of saying, the judges are capitalists, well, you can say that, like I said at the beginning, and it was a disclaimer. There are exceptions, but principally, judges do more work in a democracy than they are thanked for. Judges impact our society. Judges create change, like the Miranda Rights. Judges create change, like Roe versus Wade. And it doesn't care what side of the coin you're in. Somehow, there's always a two-party. One side gets one side wins, one side loses.
But they can also, but judges, but I'm not, like, I agree with you. Like, the individual is not the problem, but the individual has the power to make things better or worse. And I agree with you on that too, where the judge has the power to maintain laws. But
not completely.
But
not completely.
You know what I mean? Like where, like, take for example the Supreme Court allowing the Texas and I believe it was the Mississippi or Missouri abortion laws to stay. They allowed a stay for them, which puts into jeopardy Roe. But yet the justices involved in that decision said, yeah, that's fine. Is it really fine? Is it really okay? Is it really, is that really legal? And then it kind of comes down to, what does society think about that? And I know we talked a little bit about this a few nights ago, but, where, now it's the society's point of view where it's like, well, I have the right to do what I want with my body. And this is, abortion is a healthcare issue that predominantly affects working class people because we can't afford to go get an underground abortion safely, whereas the wealthy could. If they really wanted to find it out, they could get it. There's fines involved now where you could go and report your neighbor, and the neighbor gets like a $10,000 fine slapped on them. It's basically making a police force out of your neighbor. there's a lot of destruction that the judiciary system can cause too. And I'm not
There
saying,
is a lot of yes,
and I'm not
yes, there is
saying
a lot.
that you know, that like an individual is a bad person, but I'm saying the act of it. So, for example, let's take a cop. You know, the guy behind the uniform, you know, might not be a bad guy, but once he puts on the uniform, he takes on the armed wing of the state, and that means enforcing the will of the state. The judge may not be a bad person. You know, you could see him in Walmart in the flip-flops and the shorts and say, "Hey, Bill, how you doing?" But once he puts on the robe or whatever attire, depending on where they are, you know, they're carrying out the will of the state, which could require arms to enforce. So it's the role that they play and who is in charge of determining that role that I have an issue with. It's not the
Yeah.
judge or the police officer that I think is bad. I don't think a tool is bad. I think the way they're used is bad under this current
Well,
system.
in a certain respect, I should put it that way. What I did say about the law, that the courts are to enforce the law and to interpret the law, and the police is to enforce, right? So where the judge sees a law that is against um, human interest or the interest of a particular community, like like I said, with courts and justice, there's no right and wrong. But society looks at justice to be either right or wrong. But in law, in the courts, with lawyers, justice is not about right or wrong, or right and wrong. It's about what is appropriate under the circumstance in the given case. And that is exactly what the Justice of the Supreme Court held in the case in Mississippi abortion law. It is about what is. You can decide a certain case with the same circumstances, but a clause or a fact or something that is introduced into that law or the time or circumstances can change the decision of the court in the twinkle of an eye. I agree with you that courts have a fundamental role to saving our democracy. I believe that the role of judges, and which is why I am advocating for redefining that role.
Well, let's talk about that. What is that role you want judges to take?
Social change, socio-judicial, socio-political change. Judges, I defined the role in my dissertation. I wrote my dissertation on the role of the Nigerian judiciary. Even though Nigeria is there, basically it applies to any judiciary that is in a democracy. The role of the Nigerian judiciary in a democracy, and I classified the roles as ideal and real roles. The real roles of the judge has to do with what we know now as adjudicating, as interpreting the law, somewhat administrative as well. But the ideal role is the role of social change. The role where a judge would hold a decision in Brown versus Board of Education and change a racist practice. It is a role that says, judges, courts are supposed to have hearings in public places. But under the pandemic, we cannot have such open public hearings. So with my discretion, virtual is as good as public, even though it is a constitutional mandate, the constitutional requirement that courts should be in public.
So you basically...
So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
So basically you want judges to be more cognizant of their role in being able to shape and influence society.
Thank you. And that is how I came about the theory that I propounded in my dissertation. I propounded the theory called the Socio-Judicial theory, socio-judicialism.
Yeah, explain that.
Socio-judicialism simply, I don't want to go into the legal terminology, so I'll try to be as um, elementary as I can. It's simply a theory of empathy, social empathy, judicial empathy. It's a theory that says, hey, judge, we understand that you are interpreting the law as is, and you have the Scalia approach to interpreting the law. But can you please consider the Ruth Bader Ginsburg approach to interpreting the law? Can you connect the friendship between Scalia and Ginsburg and connect realism to formalism and try to interpret the law to the interest of society? Give a Sotomayor kind of approach to judging. Make society understand that, make someone like Anthony understand that you're not a capitalist, because justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. If you do justice because you feel, oh, this is what the law says, and for me as a judge, justice means that whatever facts I have before me, whatever the police and the prosecutor presents before me, the DA and all of that, I would put it all in a context, and voila, the puzzle is set. No, that may be justice for you, and you think that you have brought the point home, but that is not justice for Anthony or Anthony's family or Anthony's community, because Anthony thinks that you are being unfair, that you can do something about it, but you don't want to. So you can't keep telling Anthony all the time that, oh, my hands are tied because it's the legislators. Like Ari is explaining right now to Anthony that it's all about the laws that the legislators have made, and the judges have to interpret that law. But Anthony doesn't want you to tell him stories about the legislators. You as judges, what can you do about it? Can you repeat Brown versus Board of Education? Oh, yes, you can. How? You make your views. You state your opinion. And most of the time, these opinions are dissenting opinions. They're opinions that are not with the crowd. I'll give an example of a decision in my country, Nigeria. My late father decided on a decision against cultural discrimination against women. You know about African society, about patrilinealism and patrilocal society, where men are superior to women, and women don't have a right to inheritance in certain, most African traditional communities, right? And so the traditional customary law prevailed, and so that was the situation. And then a decision came, and all of the justices say, well, this is the decision. Why don't we go by the status quo? And the judge got up to say, no, women have equal rights as men to inheritance. Wow. And that decision became one of the first and most celebrated cases in Nigeria, one of the most celebrated cases in Nigeria, about turning the feminist jurisprudence in Nigeria and in Africa to favor women. And today that case, Mojeku against Mojeku, is being celebrated because a judge decided and said, no, this must change. We can't go on like this. This law is not favorable to women, and women are equal to men. So are there judges who can have that kind of approach and mindset so that someone like Anthony could see the court more as friendly to society? I believe so.
Now,
so that is where, yeah.
So that's a good theory. I mean, I feel like that would do a lot of good within our current framework, to really train justices in that. My major, I have two points of concern. The first being the class-based element of it, like good for who, and would these laws would inherently be, unless we can make judicial training available to a wide array, and we, limit how long and what the requirements are for, being a justice. I could still see it being hijacked by the opportunists, and every system can be hijacked by the opportunists. Um, I'm worried about the poverty aspect of it. Will these justices under the social judicial system be more focused on social issues than economic issues because of the class nature of our society? And the other question, excuse me, I'm sorry. The other question that I had was, um, oh God, I just lost it. Okay, never mind. I'm sorry. I hate when that happens. Oh my God.
It will come back.
Hopefully. What was the but to my first question, when it comes to, oh no, it was about corruption. So, say, we have someone that is socially empathetic, but the people at large will say no, we don't, like, say it's a hyperpolar issue. How would social judicialism react, say, masking children in schools? Like, that's one of the biggest 50-50 issues in this country. How would it approach such a controversial topic?
Okay, thank you. That's a very, very, very interesting question. Now, the socio-judicial concept of justice has some basic principles. It has a principle of equity. You have to consider what is most valuable to the society as a whole. It's not a certain respect or a certain part of society, it has the principle of equity and good conscience. It has the principle of humanity and judicial empathy. It has the principle of social impact, the principle of the living law, and the principle of the preamble. Now, these are the 5 principles that make up what I call SJT, Socio-Judicial Theory or Socio-Judicialism. First of all, we go with the principle of the preamble. What does the constitute the principle of the preamble? The preamble says, we, the people of the United States. It's a we, right?
Right.
So there is a mandate, a constitutional mandate of a corporate united America. And then we go to the principle of social impact. No, before the principle of justice, equity, and good conscience. What does it mean justice for the courts to enforce that all school children must be vaccinated? What is the principle of the preamble? What was the intention of the Philadelphia Fathers when they coined that preamble?
Well, it was all of us.
How does justice, pardon me?
It was all of us. I wasn't sure if that was rhetorical or not. I was just saying that the intention was for all of us to feel represented.
Thank you. So we're connecting it now. We're connecting it to the principles of socio-judicialism. The principle of justice and equity, good conscience. What is the motive of this state mandate? Is it to control people, to ensure safety of the children, to curb the spread of the virus? Then the principle of humanity and judicial empathy. If the judge decides we cannot ask everybody to be vaccinated, we can't force people to be vaccinated, but can we try and, when we say equity is here and there. Balance, let there be an equality of some sort, representation of all, right? So how does the judge say for those who don't want to be immunized and for those who want to be vaccinated, and those who don't want to be vaccinated, how can we reach a humanistic understanding? Judicial empathy. I understand that some of you have religious issues. I understand that some of you have health issues, health concerns. I understand some of you just don't trust the system. So you're not even sure what this virus is all about, and you would rather play safe than be sorry. Today you hear Johnson versus Johnson and Johnson, and tomorrow you hear that Johnson and Johnson is no longer a CDC certified. We're all sticking with Pfizer or Moderna, and then the next you're not even sure. So some of you are neither here nor there, so you're not ready to be vaccinated. And some of you are saying, you know what, we will wait a year to see how this goes. My kids are not going to be vaccinated. And so we're divided. And then some of you are saying, you know what, this thing is killing people like chickens. I'm not going to sit here and watch my kids die. I'm going to get them vaccinated. So we have a school district where there is this certain level of division where kids who are not vaccinated are most often out of school than the kids who are vaccinated. Because if you're vaccinated, you'll be in school and you take all your lessons. And if you're not, when you are exposed, they ask you to go quarantine. And when you are quarantined, what happens? You don't get the lessons, you miss out on their topics, and nobody has any extra lessons for you. So it's not like you can join in some school districts, not that you can join virtually. You are staying home because the quarantine was impromptu. So no one has made any arrangements for you to be part of the class. So you are missing on some stuff. So if you're not a smart kid who is able to get these lessons, you're on your own. And that is a problem for your parents. And then we're not even thinking about the economic aspect, where your parents now have to look for a babysitter or stay home, and how does that affect the employee-employer relationship? You see all of this?
Yeah.
So the judge has all of this, ADHD going all over their head, right?
Right.
Because they're thinking, how are we? So that is the principle of humanity and judicial empathy. The judge is thinking, how are we going to handle the situation? Because it is a big problem. It is like spreading the web of a spider's web all over the place. So,
I think your theory is very good then, because if that's a requirement to understand all these socioeconomic concepts to make a ruling, I think that would, and if that was a requirement to be a judge, it would prevent a lot of the potential of these hard knocks types of judges where it's like, well, this is the law, kid. You know those types of judges that I'm talking about?
yes.
It would prevent a lot of that.
Yeah. So that's so at that aspect, now you move over to the principle of social impact. So with all of that, what is the social impact? The social impact is the economic aspect. The social impact is the health aspect. Because if that child is not, if you don't give me a choice, you either wear a mask or you get yourself vaccinated, then we have an issue of having more of this spread than not. And then if that happens, the economic aspect definitely is going to we're going to get in trouble, because the economy is not getting any better as it is right now. So where we have to be sending money to households to take care of issues, people may get broke. There will be bankruptcy all over the place. Companies are not going to sit there and say, oh, we understand. No, people have to put food on their table. And the judge has to consider all of this in upholding or suspending that mandate. Then the principle of the living law. Who is the law created for? The law of CDC. Is it for the dead or for the living? Is the law supposed to be for people to enjoy their society, or it's supposed to be based on what somebody who is dead had already written a law and said, oh, this law should applied based on this. So if we go back to the preamble, the Philadelphia fathers have died, but they kept a preamble there. Are you interpreting the preamble based on when it was written or now? The law is for the living and not for the dead. Society has changed from then. We're now in an era where pandemic is giving birth to children and grandchildren. So we don't know what is coming after Omicron. We don't even know what is coming after. So we just have to give a decision where people have the liberty based on the preamble of the Constitution, but at the same time consider how impactful their decision is on society. It is a united front.
It's trying to figure out almost what is liberty in this new age.
Thank you.
It's a very difficult question.
Exactly, that's it, because Anthony, your liberty ends where Aries begins. You don't have any liberty when it comes to my doorstep, Anthony. It ends where mine begins. So if you're asking me to give up my liberty for you, no, sir. You came to my space.
Right. Yeah. No,
so your
that's
liberty ends where mine begins.
That is judicial precedence too. You can't yell fire in a movie theater, or bomb in an airport. Your free speech only goes so far. And this is the scary. Now this is the part where, if we delve into the sects of the of the debate here, those on the right wing will say, this is the coming of dictatorship, this is censorship, this, that, and the third. And in some ways there are, with the constant, if you mention CDC or coronavirus on your Instagram post or your social media, little blurbs will come up trying to fact check it. And then there's also on the left where it's like, this is not going to result in anything bad. There's nothing going on. It's just strictly a health measure. But then there's all the things that the right wing mentioned. There's people that also lose their jobs because they don't want to get vaccinated. And there's people that have increasing blind trust in government institutions. So on both ends of it, I can see, the positive aspects of both ends and the negative aspects of both ends of it. And
the courts have work to do. The courts have a lot of work to do because we are just starting. And my dissertation, I did write about the impact of this on the judge, on the judiciary, because when the rest of you are going on with your lives after this virus, that is when the courts would begin to go on with their jobs, because people are going to sue for wrongful termination, people are going to sue for discrimination, people are going to sue for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and now it's going to come down to rewriting it in such a state of emergency.
Exactly.
This is a very unprecedented moment because, in a way, it requires a level of mobilization and cooperation we have not seen since the Second World War. But we're fighting an enemy that we can't deploy soldiers to. So it's almost like.
So this is like a third world war.
Yes.
Against the virus. Yeah. Yeah, you got that right.
I have it right now. It sucks, but it's the result of and I blame a lot of, and this is where the anti-capitalism comes in, and it's just kind of like, we had ample warning about this. We saw this in China in February. I remember sitting in a bar. It was 2 days after my 21st birthday, so this was February 2nd. I'm sitting in a bar, and me and my friend, we look up at a TV, and it's talking about the coronavirus. And we turn to each other, and we're just making jokes. We're like, oh, this is going to be the next Ebola. It's going to be nothing, whatever. Lo and behold, 3 years later, here we are. And it was just it was just ridiculous. It was just kind of like we had ample notice of this thing, and no one shut down the country. No one closed the borders, but you know what I mean? No one started producing masks. And it's this new era of what do we do? What's our society? What is democracy in the age of coronavirus? And I think that people like you are really essential in determining this outcome and this fate. of our country, and thinking of these new theories is important because there's too many people that operate within the old world when clearly we're in a new one.
Exactly.
So
I like that one.
I
would steal it.
What did you say?
People operate in the old world. I said I like that line. I will steal it. Operate in the old world while we're in a new one.
Hey, I mean, you could take that all you want. Just give me some credit so I can get some listeners.
I will. I will. I trust me. I will.
Thank you. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and spending the better part of an hour and a half with me talking about this stuff. These are important questions to consider, and I'm glad we talked about, especially like the class end of justice. I feel like that's an area that is sadly overlooked, and I'm glad we were able to discuss your theory on socio-judicialism. I think that's an important discovery and creation.